What is myth number 7? Myth number 7 is that a great relationship has nothing to do with sex. Yeah, well, that's not right. It does have something to do with sex. I'm not saying that sex is everything. If you have a good sexual relationship, it registers about 10% on the important scale, meaning it makes up about 10% of what's important in the relationship. But if you do not have a good sexual relationship, it registers about 90% on the important scale. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is if you have a good sexual relationship, you enjoy it, you feel relaxed and accepted and involved and intimate with your partner, and you just move on to all the other aspects of the relationship, all the other parts of intimacy, the sharing, the mutual support, the knowing each other, the being able to read each other, the things that really define the relationship. So if you've got it, it's about 10% and you move on to other things. But if you don't, it's about 90%. Why? Because man's number one need is acceptance. And when I say man, I mean humans. I don't mean man, male man. I mean people, male or female. Our number one need is acceptance. Our number one fear is rejection. And when you're in a romantic relationship, when you're in a committed relationship, the most vulnerable you feel is if your partner is attracted to you or not. If you are rejected at that level, if your partner shuns you sexually, they say, I'm just not attracted to you. I'm just not stimulated by you. I just have no desire for you. That's when it becomes 90% because you can't get past it. If that is good, if that is meeting both partners' needs, that's when it's about 10%. You say, okay, check that box and let's move on. How well do we know each other? How much time do we spend with each other? What kind of problems do we need to resolve? What's our communication levels? How do we respond to each other sensitively, etc.? So ask yourself, what does it communicate if you have an asexual relationship? And I'm not just talking about intercourse. I'm not just talking about the act itself. When you ask people, how often do you have sex? Give a survey, you ask people, they're going to lie. If they say 4 times a week, it's 2. If they say 2, it's 1. For some reason, everybody feels the need to exaggerate that. But here's what I believe, and here's what I've observed. There's a difference between men and women when it comes to the sex act, and I can tell you that there's a real disconnect here. The time from the initiation of the sex acts to satisfaction for men is about somewhere between 4 and 6 minutes. For women, it's about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that there's a disconnect there. Somebody's getting their needs met and somebody's not, unless there's real good communication going on. So somebody will say, how long does it take to have sex? I say, well, he says 4 to 6 minutes. She says 15 or 20. Here's what I say. I say it takes about 2 days. And I'll tell you why I say that. In the real world, in real relationships, having sex on a Wednesday night may start Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning. Because you're going through your week, you're busy buzzing around. Let's say Tuesday morning, you're both getting ready to leave, and you just take a little extra time. That kiss goodbye is just a little bit longer. That hug is just a little more personal and a little less hurried. When you get home that night and you're having dinner, maybe there's a little more physical contact in the kitchen. Maybe there's a little more eye contact, a little more interplay. Then the next morning, again, there's now actually a little flirtatiousness going on. There's maybe a call during the day. Then it comes time for dinner that night. Maybe there's a little more interaction then. There's a little effort to maybe put the kids to bed with a little less chaos. It just starts ramping up where the priority list is shuffled. what was at the top of the priority list, which was kids, job, laundry, car, bill paying, dot, 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 dot. All of a sudden, your relationship starts drifting to the top. You start regarding each other a little bit more. You start paying attention to each other a little bit more. So Wednesday night, when you go to bed, you do have relations. I think in most situations, if you will look, that act actually started 18, 24, 36 hours sooner. Call it foreplay, call it dialing in, sensitivity, or whatever. The reason a good sexual relationship is so important is not that time that you're together in bed. It's all the time that's leading up to it. It's all the attention that you share with one another. It's everything that goes on between you leading up to it, and then the closeness that you have afterwards. That's why it's so important. Not just that 4 to 20 minutes, it's everything before that and after that. That's important because without it, you also start to lose emotion. You start to lose emotional expression. It can be of enormous symbolic importance. It can be the greatest single point of disappointment in a relationship. It can lead to feelings of deep anxiety and rejection and inadequacy, or it can be a great sense of security and appreciation. It causes you to focus on the other person. It causes you to pay attention to what their needs are. So is it important? Yes, it is. It's very important. Number 8, a great relationship cannot survive a flawed partner. Well, boy, oh boy, we better all hope that's not true. Because if that's true, we need to all get a bus to come through our neighborhood and pick us up and take us down to courthouse together. Because we're all flawed partners. We're all flawed partners. Come on. It's all a matter of degree, right? Most therapists will wrongly tell you that if you have what lay people would call, quote, craziness, or even serious weirdness in the character makeup of one or both partners, that a good relationship, a healthy relationship, is just impossible. But of course, people that say that are selling therapy. They're saying, hey, you got to come in and get this fixed. No, you don't. No, you don't. I can't tell you how many marriages have come to a quick end because one of the parties would say that the person I married turned out to be really some kind of, quote, nutcase, or they turned out to have these quirky, idiosyncratic behaviors. I'm not sure we even really have a good handle on what normal is, but I'll guarantee you, you go down the neighborhood and you stop at one door and in another and in another and in another, whatever normal is at your house is not what they call normal at the house next door, or the house next door to them, or the house next door to them. It's different in every house. It's all in how you label this. I have dealt with families that have had full-blown psychotics in the home that were actually good parents, but they had certain characteristics about them that made them atypical. They were different. You know, relationships can be very adaptive, and you can really bend yourself around individual differences. I had a family in therapy at one point where, frankly, the mother was schizophrenic. She's very high functioning, I'll say that, but she was very devoted to her husband and children, and her hallucinations, mostly auditory, were pretty benign. They were non-disruptive to the family and home, but it was definitely behavior that was worthy of change. There's no question about it. I mean, she was hearing voices. Her name was Carol Ann, and she herself wanted to be better. She had insight, which is a huge factor in the outcome of therapy. She and her husband, Don, came in. He was always with her. He came to all of the sessions. He was always with her. I made some progress with her across time. I mean, it was change-worthy behavior, even though they accommodated to it. It was change-worthy behavior. When I say I made some progress, I say some because In one of our later sessions, she had reportedly said she hadn't heard a voice for like 14 days in a row, which was the longest period of silence ever. And when I asked her if she was hearing any voices, she said she was not. I asked her if she completely and fully understood that these were hallucinations and not someone trying to possess and control her. She said, "Yes, I do understand that completely. I know this is all in my head. I totally get that." But she said, just to be on the safe side, I did cut all the wires in our intercom system throughout the entire house. We had speakers in every room, and I went through because that's where I hear these voices coming from. And I know they're not there. I know they're not in the walls. I know they're not in those speakers, and I haven't heard anything for 14 days. But just to be on the safe side, I cut every wire and every speaker in the house. Now, does that mean that she's really cured? Does that mean she's really got this under control? Well, probably not. I mean, she was a beautiful, intelligent, energetic woman, fabulous mother with great insight. But everybody knew, her kids knew what was going on, her husband knew what was going on. And in this case, even she knew what was going on. I remember talking to her husband about it. I said, "How do you cope with this?" He said, "Well, we've just decided that it's charming. We've just decided that she's exotic and it's charming. She's not defensive about it. So I can just ask her, 'Are you listening to me or are you listening to somebody else?' And she'll say, 'Well, I'm listening to somebody else, if you don't mind.'" So they just adapted to it. And look, I'm not saying that that should be on the resume of who you're looking for, that you go out and look for somebody that's neurotic or psychotic, but I am saying nobody is going to be like everybody else. And you don't have to say because somebody is atypical or has a unique way of being in the world that that means you can't adapt to it. Maybe it's workaholic, maybe it's claustrophobia, or maybe they do have to have all of their P's in a line on their plate. As long as they're getting by, as long as they're functioning, and certainly if they're open to talking about it, you can accommodate this.